It describes Og, king of Bashan, that his bed was like 13 feet or so. So as a giant, it's possible he was 13 feet, which makes him probably, the tallest person in the Bible. So there's that. The shortest person, of course, was Nehemiah, because he was knee high. Hello, hello. Welcome to my channel. My name is Brandon Wheeler. Why do I have a straw in my mouth? Because when I was in the army, I had a heat stroke, so I can't talk right unless I'm biting down on something. That's what it sounds like. So it gets easier to just use this to talk. Moving on. Welcome to my channel. I am a indie author. I have some couple books with more on way. I do like videos with escape rooms and marbles and everything like that. But I do a bunch of reviews that I'm doing more and more on book reviews and movies and stuff that I've seen. I've also done some, which is apropos for this, some Bible, some old videos and stuff. Also reading through, First Samuel, and I read through Luke during Christmas a couple years ago. But going back to First Samuel, that's very relevant for this video because one, it's my favorite book in the Bible, but two, House of David. Now, this isn't the first time that they've done something based off of quote unquote David in the past. There was this thing called, what was a show called Kings? Never watched it or anything, but I know it existed because it was on for a little bit, but they took kind of that and they put it like in a futuristic setting or whatever like that. So it's not really biblical or anything like that, but that's what they did with that. And then there was this other show called of Kings and Prophets, which I guess try to be kind of the same thing, but even more Games of Thrones-ish in a lot of ways, which from what I understand, that's what they did. But again, that didn't fly at all. So seemingly this is something that Hollywood has very much have tried to want to do multiple times. And they might have finally succeeded. Maybe. But that's what this is about. House of David. It's made by the guy who made like I can only imagine, a couple I think other biblical movies and everything. So it's like, okay, so it's got some Christian actual backing or something. All right, what's going on here? But the big thing is like, okay, how accurate is it biblically, and how much are we going to start straying? Because it says, in the beginning we're gonna, stray some things, but we're trying to stay true to everything. Like, okay, Prince of Egypt does the same, but stays predominantly true. So what are we talking about here? Well, so House of David starts off. It gives you a little teaser of David versus Goliath, where it looks like Goliath is slaying David, which is like, wait, that's not right. Now, it's easy to start off with that, to tease you with that, because David and Goliath is arguably the, outside of New Testament things with our Lord Jesus, is, yeah, yes, I am a Christian. That's why, if that's not obvious, that thing, the cross thing in the back, I guess, is too old. But it's arguably the most famous story out of the Bible, although, unfortunately, if you ask a lot of people, young people today, even in the church, they don't know it, so that's unfortunate. But hopefully this helps open it up. Um, it starts off in a very interesting spot where it doesn't start off, even though it's First Samuel, it doesn't start off in the beginning of First Samuel where it's talking about Hannah or anything like that. Nope, doesn't start that way at all. Again, it starts off with a little teaser of David versus Goliath, but it really starts off after Saul fails to kill the Amalekites and everything. So it's just kind of like, oh, okay, we're starting off there. Now, one thing I noticed off the bat, my immediate thought is, okay, how tall is Saul? Do they make him actually taller? And to their credit, he's actually taller than everyone I see in the room. I'm like, oh, okay, so he's taller than everyone. Okay, he's older than everyone. Okay, they're starting off kind of interesting and stuff. I'm like, okay, interesting. They have Samuel come in, played by Stephen Lang, and he does a good job of Samuel, I'd say, throughout the entire thing. That first episode, predominantly accurate, although I know it gets into like what condition was the when the evil spirit inflicting Saul, or when he loses his mind, what was the condition doing that? And he starts out visions of, Agag and all this other stuff. Does he, what type thing you get? That is a little bit weird when they get into that, but call it artistic license, because to be fair, we don't know what it was. It does say he was sometimes like raving, prophesying, or just raving at times. So to be fair, so it's just like, okay, so we'll get into that. That's fine. Artistic license, but it's fine. They do have Samuel Hugh Agag in pieces, which good, accurate. Um, what else? So beginning wise, it's pretty good. They have Mirab, Michal, the two daughters of Saul. But interesting enough, they only have Jonathan and well Ishbosheth, but they call him Ishbal, which is I found out I was like, why are they calling him that? And I looked it up like, oh, okay, that's another like Hebraic name to have for him. But out of the sons of Saul, because there's other sons of Saul, it's just those two, Ishbal and Jonathan. I get it, you're because they're automatically you can tell making this series to try to line up more and more with David's life to go forward into the future and everything, which is like, okay, you're trying to tease and you're trying to hope that you can get the multiple seasons and you've been renewed for season two. So I guess you're gonna kind of get it. So we're gonna kind of see the line of stuff. So they're trying to tease Ishbal and everything. I was like, okay, because he was a nemesis to David for a while when you get into it. Well, of course, that's more in Second Samuel, but none of the other sons are mentioned. Nothing. I mean, to be fair, I can't remember one instance where they talk at any time in First Samuel. The only time you mention is like they're mentioned with Saul and that they die in that last battle along with Jonathan, unfortunately. But it was just like, huh, okay. Uh, Jonathan himself, I was like, okay, Jonathan, he's got to be noble. He's got to be. He has again. This part of the reason why I like First Samuel so much. Jonathan has to be on top of things. He's got to be loyal and everything to the Lord and stuff. And they show him being more loyal and everything. The Lord is like, okay, he's honorable. Okay, good. We're keeping that. You're doing good with Jonathan. Overall, they did good with Jonathan in this show. They actually did really good well with Saul. Um, they have Abner being played by Did Fair. I just think of him as like, oh yeah, he's the guy from the Mummy, and he's playing in the thing. I'm like, oh okay. So they. Oh, before I mention about Saul's wife, Mirab, the older daughter of Saul. Guess who she is? I looked this up. I was like, okay, who are the cast of this? Like, wait, who is she? Oh, she's this. Guess who she is? She is the granddaughter of all day long. If I was a wealthy man. She's the granddaughter of Topol. And I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. That was just, oh, like it's like, oh, cool. So and I see family still going and everything. Now, this is where it starts splitting. It's not mentioned anything about Saul's wife in Scripture, at least in the Bible thing. I don't know if they're taking and they are taking a lot of artistic license from the I don't know if it's Talmudic fables, but in like different translations of old Hebraic texts and everything, extra stuff that legend, fable. It's not necessarily sanctioned. It's not really clear if it's like things of that. But I don't recall anything that I remember about Saul's wife uh, being anything that. But they make her a cutthroat and everything. And it's like, okay, I don't know if this is how she was, but I'm gonna be like, And of course, bringing in the Witch of Endor doesn't help. It's just like, oh gosh, that's what we're bringing in for the Witch of Endor. We're bringing her in now. We're going to bring her in. Oh, okay, okay. Well, I know where she's going to end up and everything. That's great. Yeah, because she's trying to solve issues with Saul, and she obviously turns away from the Lord and hires a freaking witch of Endor. But Jonathan is not having any of that. Sends her away finally, but still, gosh. You're doing more harm to literally witches brew and everything. It's doing more harm to Saul than anything. She's if there's a villain in the show and stuff, she's the villain of the Saul's household. So gosh, and I can only imagine what's going to happen in the future with everything. Speaking of villains, going into Achish. Again, I don't know about Achish's father and all that, but they really put a motivation in him and stuff. But he was interesting and everything. It's going to be kind of interesting what they're going to do with David, because obviously he sees David, defeat Goliath and different things like that. But in the future, it's him who allows David into his home. And David sees him is like, oh yeah, I was against Israel doing this and that and everything else. And in reality, he was doing stuff against his own allies, but he didn't know any of that. And he's like, I don't find any fault in David. So I'm wondering how they're going to handle that battle. And it actually made me question, I was like, wait a minute. If Akesh was at that final battle against Saul, did Akesh die? Because we don't know. After that moment, I don't remember Akesh being mentioned again. Offhand, like biblically. I don't remember him being mentioned offhand as like, okay, so David would become king of Israel, and he would fight against the Philistines for a little while until they get subdued. But was was he part of that, or did he die at that last battle as well? I don't know what they're gonna do with that. I don't. Hmm. I really don't know. From a biblical point of view, I was like, I don't know what did happen to Akesh, but I don't know. Um, Now the intrigue and stuff with the Philistines and everything like that is like okay, interesting. The five lords, the Philistines, yeah, they don't always get along, crap like that. So interesting. Before I get into stuff with David, we're gonna get into stuff with Goliath. Um, Goliath. It is interesting they showed Goliath's brothers because there's portions in Second Samuel where seemingly his brothers fight, and one of them almost kills David. But it mentions I think he has three or four brothers, but they only show a couple with Goliath. Now, hypothetically, it could be they might be away at some other spot, but it is interesting they at least show them. So again, they're setting up for future seasons to try to show those things happening. Now, this part is where it gets into the Hebraic, maybe legend, Jewish fable stuff that is there. Could be true. Not necessarily. It's like, that stuff with Lilith, that whole thing. They mention the mother's name. And if I remember correctly, what they said was Orpah. Does that name sound familiar? If you're not familiar, it is Orpah is the other bride to be that the sons who left in Ruth. Remember in Ruth, the two sons they married. There was Ruth and Orpah. Orpah went back to her family and everything like that, whereas Ruth, story of Ruth, which is also relevant in this thing because of something. Now, it is speculated in legend type thing that Orpah is the quote unquote mother of Goliath and all these giants. That is something I've read. And this is a study that I've studied stuff in years prior and everything. Okay, just for clarification. It's not just something I just read on the internet now. No, this is something I've read prior that is actually discussed from years ago. And if she is in fact related to Ruth, like they were sisters, then technically, if she's Ruth's sister and David's a descendant of Ruth, technically him and Goliath are cousins? Goodness. It's like a sinus infection I've been fighting. So it gets into that kind of thing. It's like, okay, interesting. Of course, that whole Nephilim thing is always debated about how the angels came to be. Is the sons of God thing refer to like the angels coming down and maybe mixing with humanity, or does it relate to the godly line of Seth mixing in with Cain? Don't know. But either way, those Nephilim would have been wiped out during the flood because that was pre-Noah. But seemingly, the giants still continued past Noah after the flood, so we know that's like, oh. Now you could say it's like, okay, descendants still through man and everything like that. Or, just certain mixings and stuff shouldn't happen. Or giants weren't, just still more common back then. Because even then, again, I mentioned it, Og, king of Bashan, it's like 13 feet. I did that in the teaser intro, but I mean, still, that's believed that thing. And Goliath, some things say Goliath was about 6'6", depending on how the cubit thing was. I believe he was the other one that's more commonly accepted, about 9'9", 9'10". Though with the armor, he would have at least looked 10 feet, because depending on what the helmet was and all that. So it's like quite a few things like that. Now at first they have this. This is the one thing that's weird. This is the part of the show that really veers off. They use Doeg. I didn't know it was Doeg for a long time until it finally got mentioned later on. I'm like, oh, that's Doeg. He's gonna be around for a while in the show, and they make him a weird guy. But they used him to try to hunt down information of like who maybe Samuel anointed or anything like that. This is where because they find out, okay, what did Samuel say to Saul that caused all this stuff, and they're blaming Samuel for everything like that. A little boy heard what it was, and then they find out from the boy, and now they want to say like, oh, he anointed another. We got to go kill this other king. This is where the political intrigue stuff is, especially from the wife. And Doeg's trying to find out and everything. He kills Samuel's assistant, and it's just like this gets. This is where it's like, okay, you're veering off a lot. Jonathan goes and finds Samuel and gets beat up by Samuel. It's just like go Samuel. That's funny, but it's just like that's a part of the veering off the show. It's like, okay, they use that as a catalyst for getting Goliath back in to fight. But I have a big question that's not really answered show wise. If you have Goliath and your whole goal when you quote unquote in the show outnumber the Israelites 3-1 that you're saying, why not just go to war? Why not just fight? And they don't even address that in the show. It's just kind of like Akesh is just happy with them sitting around. I mean, you have the advantage, the miracle thing. Why aren't you? I know, I get it. You want to kind of whittle them down. They kind of do this thing where part of Zebulun's going away, and they get ransacked, attacked. But it's just like, why not just fight them or whatever? What's the purpose of Goliath going out there and doing stuff? He wants revenge. Just go out and start fighting. Why are you? It didn't make any sense. Biblically, I get it because they were like, oh yeah, you would do this or that. But it just seemed from a show perspective, it didn't seem like a valid reason to just sit around. Just, just saying, it's like if your whole goal is to stop them, just do it. But you have the advantage here, just do it. And then you're just like, you don't. They don't even show him gloating about it. It's like, yeah, we're gonna gloat about it. Like after the first day, you could have had him like gloating. It's like they didn't want to come out after one day. Or it's like, and then after 2 days, 3 days is like, you know what? I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying sitting around. They're growing weaker. We're growing stronger. I'm enjoying because they're. You don't even have that in the show. It's like, what? Why? All right, but going back to the Orpah thing, whether that's true or not, where Orpah was, Goliath's mother and everything else, don't know. But it's just like speculation of stuff. Now, David. I do like the actor for David. I like how they doing stuff with a harp and everything. That's great. Again, they don't show all of David's brothers as well. Even a thing. It's debated where Jesse had 8 sons or 7. I think he did have 8, but in Chronicles, when it mentions the line, it only mentions 7. It's probably because one son didn't have any family. So it's just like, well, we're not going to include him because he doesn't have a line. Why do we include him? But it said basically had 8. So, but they don't show all of them. So this is where it starts veering off again. Let me get to the accurate parts. David does kill a lion, which is part of the whole thing and stuff, but Jesse rebukes him for it and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, and you could say, okay, his family didn't believe him. That's fair. He says he killed a bear at one time. Okay, that's fair. Um, I'll stick to it. I'll stick to the accuracy part first. It is interesting they kept to the biblical thing where David actually knew Saul first, becoming, trying to clear his mind with the music and everything like that, and it worked. And because a lot of things to say, like Saul didn't know, a lot of the depictions just showed like, oh, he didn't know David until he killed Goliath. No, that's not what Scripture says. Scripture says he was described as, a man of war because he killed a lion and a bear, and he plays music and stuff, and that's why they brought him in and stuff, everything. Now, the way they did this is where it gets into this stuff. They're doing this to try to give Saul, like, more credence with the tribes and everything, keep him united under his rule. So they send his daughters out to, like, a marriage and everything like that. That's where Michal meets David. She kind of falls in love with him with his music. To be fair, it does say Michal loved David. That is accurate. I don't know, as one would put it, the Hollywood way they did it in this. That was... I don't know about that. Either way, we know what happens with Michal, though. You can read about it in 2 Samuel, what happens with Michal. So it's just like, on that. The whole thing with, I'm okay with them saying, like, oh, she's able to read the scriptures or anything like that because she's allowed privileges and everything. I was like, hypothetically, being the daughter of a king, I could see that being a thing. Honestly, I can see that being a thing. Her teaching David how to read, though, I don't know about that. I think that's a bit too much. I think they're going the assumption that David wouldn't have been taught or anything. Or reading or anything like that. I think he would have been. They would have had something. A gender. If they didn't, I'd actually be surprised. But that's a little bit much. At least they made it accurate that he would know all the stories and everything because he was taught that. I was like, okay, that's good. But the reading things like, the biggest issue, and there's a lot of issues. I got to go back to the Nephilim thing for one thing, but there's where the biggest issue I've had, which is the most glaring thing in the show, how they deal with his mom. Now, it's possible I've read things that his mom may not have been of chaste character, maybe, perhaps. Perhaps. It's speculated. But at least she was alive during this time. The way they're kind of putting her in this show, they made her like a Ruth, in a way. I guess, I don't remember if they specifically said that she was a Philistine or anything like that, or if they're going to use that to try to connect it to Goliath and the Philistines. Like, I can already imagine they're going to make Achish and David somehow related, and that's going to be a weird thing. But um, they kind of make her like she's, God fearing and everything, and she's saying all this stuff. And it's like, okay, she spoilers if you haven't watched it, but if you're watching this, you're already doing this thing. I already spoiled it once, but yeah, they kill her off with a lion. She sacrificed herself to try to keep David away from this lion when he was a boy. But it's like, it doesn't say she was dead. Specifically, during the time of, again, in First Samuel, when one of the times David's running away from Saul, he goes down to the king of Moab. He asks him, can my mother and father stay with you during this time? Because his family went with him and everything and traveled with him and everything. And King of Moab agrees. His mother was alive. So it's just like, um, what are we doing here? So why? I think they were trying to make her like a Ruth type character, but not even Ruth was killed. But I get it what they're doing with Samuel and everything about, and I do like what it is. Like, you're not giving the best to the Lord and everything with Jesse. Like, that part is like, okay, that's emotional. It's good. I like it. But I don't like the way it was done. It's like, why? That's completely changing a lot of stuff, and it's just like, yeah, no, that accuracy is no, that I have to very much besmirch that. Um, his brother, one of his older brother, and everything in the show being, fighter and everything, cool, accurate. Him taking him to a city to see, destruction and stuff. Like, I mean, it's like so much is like, okay, you're just adding the show for stuff. I see a lot of things like, okay, just keep it biblical and that'd be nice, but it's like, what are we doing here as well? It's like, what, everything's, huh? Musical wise, I mean, I like David's music and stuff. I do like Jonathan, like Samuel. Biblically, how it all, again, it's got some issues with like, okay, you're omitting people, I guess, to try to make things important. You're adding stuff like with Saul's wife and everything and different stuff. It's like, especially with stuff with Doeg. That's the thing. It's just, So as far as a biblical comparison accuracy, it is okay-ish. It doesn't feel too outlandish at times. There are a couple moments, but like the whole love thing with Mikal and Doeg being a butcher like he is, like, oh gosh. Um, that those definitely, and the whole thing with David's mom, that those things are definitely the stuff of like, no. So it's okay-ish in accuracy. I do like they had like the Hebrew and stuff like that. I was like, all right, that's good. Now this I am gonna bring up because I found this out afterwards. Watching that whole Nephilim section in that episode, I was like, okay, it's interesting. They do all this special effects and stuff. Unfortunately, not special effects, and this gets into a different discussion. But AI, they used a lot of AI and Photoshop and everything else and stuff in mixing all that colors and stuff, which is weird because when I watched it, I thought I was like, oh, this almost looked like it has like an AI feel to it. And to be fair, it did give that vibe of like otherworldly stuff with the angels and all that. It was like, okay, it did fit that vibe. That otherworldly AI, uncomfortable, uncanny vibe fit it. It did. But the whole AI debate is just like, because, the stealing with art and all that crap and stuff like that. And as much as you want to fight AI and as much as we want to fight AI, it's definitely gotten just more and more inevitable that we're not going to be able to fight that, unfortunately. That's just way it is, but I I would say try to limit it as much. Don't do for all things like that. It can be a helpful tool. They use Photoshop and other things to do stuff as well, but don't. Anyway, I know that's a very hot button topic issue, and it's just like, oh. But unfortunately, it's not going to go away. And the more improvements things get made more and more, it's going to be more and more often. So, unfortunate. Anyway, House of David. Overall, we like the series. It was actually something to look forward to every week. Just like, okay, what are they doing this week? How are they going to keep it biblically and stuff and keep it accurate? I'm still going to harp on the stuff with David's mom because it's like, no, this is a no. This is a no here. This is definitely a no. um, oh, as far as the Goliath himself, I didn't mention this. The guy's like, what, 6 foot something, maybe 7 feet something. Big guy. Yeah, I'd say he plays Goliath well. It was like, definitely intimidating. So, I do like the practical effect. I think I don't mention. I think I mentioned this. The moment where they're in the cave, they show him and his brothers and his mom. They're like drinking and stuff. It made me for a moment appreciate it. See, it's the thing with the AI, and then this right here. They were doing like the effect because like Lord of the Rings thing. I can tell in a way like they're maybe closer to the camera or she's further away or something. I I'm pretty sure they were using that like perspective thing to try to make it them bigger than her and what they really are or some way. I would have to see the behind the scenes of that. Could have just like green screen her and a type thing, like similar thing as well. But it made me appreciate that because it looked very good in that moment as far as like highlight thing that way. It's like, ooh, okay. Again, I throw back to Gandalf and Frodo and Lord of the Rings Fellowship and how they did that scene. For some reason, that reminded me of that. It was like, I was very appreciative of that moment. It's like, it's a small moment, but it looked good enough that it looked realistic. I'm like, oh, okay, good. It might have been just CGI or something, but if they did the perspective thing, it was pretty seamless though, either way, almost. So I liked it. Overall, again, you have to take it with a grain of salt and stuff. I liked it, we appreciated it, and everything besides the few things. Have you seen it? Have you watched it? It's available on Amazon if you haven't watched it. It's free with the Prime thing and stuff. We watched it every week when it came out and such. We enjoyed it. Um, Season two, I know where it's going to happen because I have the book script here. So we'll just have to get into it and everything, and I'll critique it as it goes on. And I guess depending what they introduce, I'd have to try to find the resources to find out, especially about Saul's wife, because how they're going to address, they're making him like, okay, he's faithful to his wife, and it's like, Saul had concubines. We know this, right? I mean, that's the whole issue in Second Samuel of Ishbosh complaining against Abner. Is like, oh, did you do this? And he's like, what are you accusing me of? And so, I mean, technically, the only mention of Saul's wife, maybe besides her name, I think offhand, is when he was angry at Jonathan for saying why David didn't come to the table. He called him a son of a beep. Technically, I mean, because he called him, you son of a perverse woman, which in our language might be, you son of a beep. Which is like, why would you call. Okay, you're calling him that, and then essentially you're calling your wife that, and it's like, why? In a way, like, why? Alrighty. Well, have you seen House of David? What do you think about it? Good, bad? What do you think of performances, acting, action? What do you think? It is a step up, I'd say, in some ways from some other things. All right, but we'll see you in the next one. Tell me what you think in the comments, and I'll see you in the next review. Goodbye.